All right, guys, welcome in my live reaction to today's Seahawks win. They get a 34-14 win in Atlanta against a 4-2 Falcons team, a key NFC conference victory today, and the best, without a doubt, the best victory so far in Mike Macdonald's career. A lot of things came together today. I think a lot of things became more clear, and while we still might not have a clear picture of who this team is today, I think we have a better idea today of who this team could become as we move forward. Their most impressive win yet, start to finish. I'll give you my thoughts on that. And in particular, I think the storyline of today are some young players who really took advantage of opportunities and stood out today. Your comments and questions also coming up next on this edition of Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Welcome back, everybody. This edition of Seahawks Forever brought to you by BetUS and Manscaped. Big day for Geno Smith and DK Metcalf. Big day for a couple of guys on defense. Big opportunity for some young guys today as the Seahawks go to Atlanta and get a win, 34-13. Some initial kind of big picture thoughts. First of all, this felt like the type of game that we saw examples of this back in 2012, where you can start to see the pieces fitting together. I think we can underestimate how much of a transition it is to go from one coaching staff to another, especially when the first coaching staff had been there for 15 years and was led by one of the most legendary figures in the NFL over that time. When you're relying on a bunch of young players, when you have some pieces you're trying to figure out how they fit best, you add on top of that some injury issues. And then I hope that as others like me talk about this game today, that they at least give some acknowledgement to the 3 games in 11 days. Look, that was a tough stretch. And it's one that I didn't give a lot of weight to during that stretch, because I think my attitude at the time was like, hey, at some point in the season, every team has to go through this. But I think when you add it all together and you look at who the Seahawks played their first 3 weeks in the year and going 3-0, teams that didn't truly test them. You know, we heard this term a lot in training camp, iron sharpens iron. Seahawks didn't get a lot of opportunities to sharpen their iron against good football teams. And so then you play 3 games in 11 days against good football teams, all 3 of them. And you see some of the deficiencies. You see some of the weaknesses. You see some of the things that still need to be developed. And as this season continues on, we're going to start to be able to tell the difference between where there might be some blind spots and weaknesses in how the team's being coached and schemed up, and also just some personnel issues. Today, going into this game against Atlanta, a red-hot offense. Seahawks have been giving up 36 points a game in their last 3 games. The Falcons have been averaging almost 36 points a game in their last 3 games, scoring 100 points over the last 3. So it didn't seem like a great matchup for the Seahawks. But what this team looked like today was fresher, a little more complete, even though we were missing 3 of our top 5 secondary players in this one. Reek Woolen and Trey Brown not playing, Artie Burns on injured reserve, and Rayshon Jenkins also being placed on injured reserve. So really, you can make the argument for the top 6 or 7 DBs, having to rely on a practice squad player at one cornerback position, having to take Devin Witherspoon out of his regular slot position, play him a lot more outside. Kobe Bryant factored in heavily into the safety play, and then some changes up front. I think we saw a team that's starting to figure themselves out. What did we hear a lot during the offseason OTAs, mini camps, and then into training camp from both Ryan Grubb and head coach Mike Macdonald? We got to figure out what we're good at. and then lean into that, right? And I think that can be attributed to some of the issues we saw leading up to the San Francisco game with the play calling just be out of balance because they didn't feel confident enough in their running game to be able to lean into it. And so they tried to do the one thing they thought they could do well, which is throw the football with Geno Smith. And indeed, coming into this game, Geno leading the NFL in pass attempts, leading the NFL in passing yards, because that's what they had going for them. Well, today we saw them take a step forward. On offense, we saw a lot more balance. We saw them come out early and try to establish the run, but not to the detriment of the passing offense, which certainly was the case against the 49ers. We saw, I thought, a better effort from the offense early in this game to spread the ball around. Even though DK Metcalf, once again, was a focal point of the offense, it wasn't to the offense's detriment. You know, the 3 straight games, those 3 losses, every single game they came out in the first 7 or 8 plays of that game and tried to force the ball into DK, really trying to establish that connection early. Today was a little bit more balanced. And as the game wore on, some other guys stepped up and really made some plays. I thought Geno was outstanding today. His final numbers, 18 out of 28, 207, 2 touchdowns, a rating of 110. Doesn't look spectacular. He had a bunch of deep shots that just he wasn't able to connect on. I liked how aggressive Grubb kept calling the game, kept taking shots down the sideline, stressing that Falcons secondary. Let's go to my notes, and then I want to get some of your comments and questions. Because I think early on in this one, you know, perception is such a strong driving factor in how we watch games sometimes. And coming off the last 3 weeks, and even, look, let's say the first 6 weeks, right? Even though they come out with a win in New England, you know, the Patriots run for 185 yards. There were some other warning signs and red flags through those first 3 weeks, even though they were winning football games. And frankly, going into Atlanta today, I thought, I talked about it on the show leading up to this game earlier in the week, that how important this win was. That if you lose this one, drop to 3-4, you got the Bills coming in next week. Then you get into all the divisional play. You get 2 against the Cardinals in short order. You get the Rams for the first time in a couple of weeks, and then the Niners again after the bye. You get into the thick of your schedule. You drop to 3-4 today. It's an uphill battle. And maybe we would be sitting here today talking about having to change expectations to a week in, week out developmental view. This changes a lot. To improve to 4-3, to at least give yourself a chance to stay tied for the division lead. And the 49ers are currently right now playing the Kansas City Chiefs. So a chance potentially to be a game up again. And you had some guys step up in this game that I think gave a big picture view that's exciting. The biggest one leading into this game, first of all, when we found out Friday that Stone Forsythe wasn't going to be ready to go with that hand injury. And so we were going to be down to our 4th right tackle. Would it be the 42-year-old veteran Jason Peters, who had said earlier in the week he thought he was in shape, he thought he was ready to go after being on the team for 3 weeks, or the 6th-round rookie draft pick out of Division II Findlay College in Ohio, Michael Jarrell? Macdonald announces on Friday it's going to be Jarrell, and I thought it was pretty clear that was the best game we've seen a right tackle play for the Seahawks this year. Like, Abe Lucas has been out, right? We're waiting on him. They bring in George Fant. He gets hurt in the first game, or he was kind of nursing a knee injury all throughout camp, aggravates it in the first game. He has to go on IR. Stone Forsythe comes in and performs as admirably as he can, but really struggled against Nick Bosa and Aiden Hutchinson. I think Stone Forsythe had given up the most pressures in the NFL through 6 weeks, which is pretty remarkable considering he didn't play all of those snaps. And I thought, for as steep as you would think the learning curve is from Division II to the NFL, I thought Michael Jarrell not only accounted for himself well today, but I think, and I saw a lot of similar sentiment on Twitter throughout the day, and it wasn't a perfect game. He got beat badly a couple of times, one in particular in the second half. But those were rare instances. And he not only held up well, he looked like a guy. Like he looked like a dude. There was one moment on their second drive. Let me go back to my notes here. I believe it was their second drive where he had I tweeted about it at the time. He had back-to-back reps. One a run rep, and then one a pass blocking rep, and then into a run rep that were outstanding. Maybe as good a reps as we've gotten all year from the right tackle position. On the pass block rep, you saw his awareness and instinctiveness on being able to feel the inside rusher and kind of shoulder him, but then also sense that he needed to help on the edge. And so he was able to kind of shoulder and then kind of check him with one hand while he moved out and slid step out to take, his main responsibility and give Geno that extra time. And then on the very next play, going up against Matthew Judon one-on-one in a run play, absolutely completely controlled Judon on that play. I think it was a Charbonnet 9-yard run, if I'm not mistaken on that one. On the touchdown run, the second touchdown from Kenneth Walker, or the touchdown run from Kenneth Walker, it was a combination of Christian Haynes, who rotated in again with Anthony Bradford at right guard today, and Jarrell, who completely opened up that hole for Walker to run through. One of the biggest holes we've seen all year. I kind of half joked on Twitter the other day and asked, is Michael Jarrell about to Wally Pip Abe Lucas? Meaning we've been waiting all this time for Abe to come back and play right tackle. Maybe it's irrelevant. Now, look, it's just one game. But the reasons we had to get excited about Jarrell leading up to this game were tons of experience, even at a lower level, played 40 games, 33 of them, I think, starts, played at a dominant level. If you're going to make the leap from Division II to the NFL, you better dominate at that level. And that's what you see on his tape. If you go to his YouTube page, there's some of it's not great as far as the video quality, but you can see him just ragdolling guys. That's not going to happen in the NFL. But what it really impressed me is the technique, the footwork, the hand usage, the anchor. The thing that really prevents Stone Forsythe from being a starter in this league is against power rush, he just can't anchor. And there were far too many instances where he wasn't getting beat to the edge, because Stone can move his feet okay for a guy that size and that height. But he just had no anchor. And so guys like Bosa and Hutchinson would absolutely kill him just trying to bull rush the quarterback. I'm not so sure. I mean, we don't know what we have or are going to have in Abe Lucas. And certainly if you could look me in the eye and tell me that we are going to get rookie Abe Lucas back, pre-injury Abe Lucas, 100% healthy Abe Lucas, okay, great problem to have. But anything less than that, Mike Jarrell in just one game, again, I'll say it, I get it, I understand, looked like a long time answer at right tackle. Really exciting to see what he did in that game. And certainly now, the luxury it affords you is that you can take all the time you need to with Abe to make sure that he tries to get back healthy. And maybe when he does come back, shoot, maybe we can talk about Mike Jarrell playing guard. I don't know, but it's a good problem to have. Just to go back, I think another key storyline in this game is game script. The Seahawks, for the first time really this year, you can talk about the Denver game, but that game, because there were so many unknowns, never really felt like it was in hand. And certainly the way it started was so terrible. Then they were able to get a 2-score lead early in the second half and kind of weather the storm there near the end. But the Seahawks in this one were able to get ahead and play from ahead for the first time. Up 10-0 in this game, 10 minutes into it. Missed opportunities on offense and on defense early in the game. But even though, let's look at some of the team stats, because there was still, if you go back through Twitter, still a lot of fans. I got a lot of tweets today. I got tagged in a lot of stuff that, because I was talking about some of the positives I'd seen in the first half, that like this defense is trash. Defense is terrible. Defense gave them a chance throughout the game. And I get it, because in the first half, I think they ran for 110 yards. Let's see. The Falcons ended up rushing for. So this is great. So let me go back and compare it to my first half notes. I took a screenshot here because that's where I got a lot of grief in talking about what I thought were some of the positives of the first half. At halftime, the Falcons had run for 116 yards. They end up with 155 yards rushing. And so in one of those, I think, was a big explosive play. I think it was a 20-yarder from Bijan Robinson. So second half, much, much better when it came to the running game. Falcons end up with more first downs than the Seahawks, 22-20. In the first half, the Seahawks had the ball for 15 of the first 20 minutes. Really controlled the ball on offense, got some stops on defense. That was outstanding to see. At the end, Atlanta ends up in this one winning the time possession battle at 31 minutes to 29, essentially. A lot of the numbers are fairly even. Falcons 22 first downs to Seattle's 20. Third down efficiency, Atlanta 8 out of 15. It's a little better than you'd like to see. Seahawks just 4 out of 11. So they end up with a 20-point victory, and they weren't great still on third down. Total yards, Atlanta 385, Seattle 339. Seattle really took their foot off the gas the last couple of drives, ran the football, tried to run the clock down. Yards per play, Seahawks 6.1 to 5.4 for Atlanta. Passing yards, 236 for Seattle, 230 for Atlanta. And Cousins, for most of the day, had to be a check down guy, was going with the short passing game. Seattle really, even without Rayshon Jenkins, they were playing Kobe Bryant and Kayvon Wallace a lot. Limited explosive pass plays. Coach Macdonald, after the game, did lament the one touchdown to Drake London to open the second half. That came on fourth down. He was really bummed they gave that up. And at that point in the game, like, things really seemed still hung in the balance. Let me go back to my notes here. Why can I not find them? No? Okay, here we go. 17-7 they led at the half, but and really, to me, the turning point of this game was end of the second half, or end of the first half, beginning of the second half. Seahawks had an opportunity to score at the end of the first half. Then they had a drive that kind of went awry. Gave the ball back to Atlanta, and the fear there is Falcons were going to score before the half and get the ball because they won the toss, elected to defer. Seattle started with the ball on offense. Falcons were going to come out and also get the ball to start the second half. Seattle comes up with a stop twice, actually, sandwiched around kind of a dysfunctional offensive drive where they couldn't really get anything going. And then they get the ball with 1:06 left in the half. And they go to work. Hurry up off. They only have one timeout. Hurry up offense, right? Geno to Lockett, Geno to Lockett, Geno to Fant, Geno to Fant. And then there's an intentional grounding call on Geno, which is good he got rid of the ball because he was about to be sacked. Then he hits DK Metcalf for a touchdown right before the half. I tweeted at the time, maybe the best route we've seen DK run, for all the criticism he takes as an incomplete route runner, just an absolute textbook post route where he kind of looks the guy covering him off like he's going to cut outside, run a flag. He ends up running the post. Geno gets, the offensive line gives him just enough time to throws a dagger, middle of the field, touchdown, gives them that opportunity to go into the half with a bigger lead. And then they come out and get a stop to start the second half. Or I'm sorry. This is the point I was trying to make, where the game hung in the balance. Atlanta comes out, puts a 14 play. Where is it? 14 plays, 79 yards, 7 minutes, 43 seconds. That's the one that ended up with Drake London scoring the touchdown on fourth down. This was all Bijan Robinson and Drake London. Bijan accounting for 40 of the 79 yards in that drive. London accounting for the rest of it, including the touchdown. And this kind of made you 17-14 at the time. This made you think, okay, here we go. The Falcons have found the formula, right? The run defense is starting to break down. We'd given up 110 yards in the first half. Now we come out and we give 40 yards to them, up to them on the drive, although part of the 40 yards from Bijan was a little swing pass. So London, Bijan, we can't cover him. Young cornerbacks back there. Now they get the momentum back. And the Seahawks just took over the football game from there. They just took over the game. On their next drive, they get a 4th and 1 near midfield. They convert that. Huge call there. Those haven't always worked out. We've seen Macdonald willing to be aggressive based on the analytics, but some of those 4th down calls haven't worked out. This one did. Then they get a roughing the passer call on a 3rd and 5 that keeps the drive alive. They take a couple of deep shots. They stayed really aggressive on this drive. And then Geno, just an outstanding play. I can't wait to see this one on the All-22, where Geno gets pressured. This is the play where Jarrell got beat the worst. He just absolutely got beat on the outside, didn't have a chance. But Geno, and man, I'm telling you, if I had $1 for everyone who tried to tell me that Geno was bad in the pocket, that his pocket management stunk, I'd be doing pretty well for myself. And those people are just showing themselves as not knowing ball. I've talked about this issue quite a bit over the last couple of years, but he's so good in moments like this where he feels the pressure without overreacting to it. He slides slightly to his left and then kind of off balance is able to loft a throw in the right corner to Ken Walker. Walker had to make a great catch. Remember the knock on him, or the question about him coming out of Michigan State was not really sure how much of a contributor he's going to be in the passing game because he wasn't asked to do that a lot in college. Outstanding throw, outstanding catch. That gave him a 24-14 lead at the time. And so you think, okay, that's when I started to feel better because they answered. On the road against a red-hot offense that had just come down and dictated terms to you on a long drive, you come back and answer. And then after that, the defense took over. And this is what we've been wanting to see and hoping to see. You hire someone like Mike Macdonald, you expect to see it. As the defense has struggled, we've gone back and forth on trying to pin blame on that. Is the scheme not working? Does he not have the right players? Is it simply injuries? And maybe it's a combination of a little bit of all of that and the learning curve. And I keep reminding people that the first year in Baltimore as DC, it took half a season for that defense to click. And it was only really when they went out at the trade deadline and got Roquan Smith that it really kicked in. But early in the season, they gave up 50 to Miami in one game. They were struggling to figure out exactly how to use Kyle Hamilton. It took a minute. But then this team took over and finally started to get some turnovers. We hear about how turnovers are cyclical, how you regress to the mean if you don't have them. They haven't been taking the ball away, and they did in droves from about the midpoint of the third quarter on. We saw the strip sack from Boye Mafe getting all over Kirk Cousins. He knocks the ball out. Derek Hall picks it up and scores on the touchdown, his first career touchdown. Love to see it for him. Really sneaky hidden part of that play that was so great is Devin Witherspoon coming from all the way down, defending basically the screen in the slot and racing all the way down to get the final block to ensure that Hall was going to get into the end zone. Then a couple of interceptions, Julian Love with the pick, Kobe Bryant with a pick. Mike Macdonald talked earlier this week about how he's excited about the opportunity for Bryant because he always affects the football, did it again. Started to finally make some plays on defense. And then sandwiched around all of that were some big run stops and some really cool performances. So I've got some accolades. I already talked about Michael Jarrell, right? Christian Haynes also seemed to, although Anthony Bradford held up pretty well too. I think Geno only took 1 sack today. Let me just confirm that. Let me see. Just 1 sack for a 6-yard loss. That was in the second half. Seahawks with 6 sacks of Kirk Cousins today. But some other guys that really stood up. You have to talk about Byron Murphy. His impact on the defense was obvious. Might not have been the biggest game in the box score. Let's see what he ends up with. Byron Murphy with 4 tackles, 2 solo, 1 tackle for loss. But you could tell there were times he was being double teamed and he freed up other guys. There were times he's impacting the run play, even though he wasn't getting credited for the tackle. He made life a little easier for Leonard Williams and some of the other guys along that defensive line. And there were some other standouts along there as well. Welcome to Seattle, Roy Robertson Harris. He ends up with 5 tackles, 2 solo, but it seemed like he was even more active than that. You could see why they went out and acquired this guy. Like him, I think now the combination, as good as we thought our defensive line could be before the injuries, with Byron Murphy and Jay Reed and Draymond Jones and Mafe and then Nwosu before he got hurt. You got Jonathan Hankins providing some depth there, along with the rookie Murphy. Robertson Harris looks like a full-time legit starter, a guy that can play the edge and inside, a guy that can affect the run and the pass. Seemed really active, blew some plays up. The combination now of Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, and Roy Robertson Harris is really, really exciting. And then I tweeted this out at one point during the game. Did we see Draymond Jones' best game as a Seahawk? Again, if you just look at the box score, just 2 tackles, but a sack, 2 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, a pass defense. He seemed to affect almost every play in the second half. Like, for those of you willing to give up on Draymond Jones and assume that he's going to be traded in the offseason or cut to save some salary cap space, look, ultimately you could be right. They're going to have some tough decisions to make there, especially if they want to bring Robertson Harris back, who has 2 unguaranteed years left on his deal, but at decent salary cap figures, 6, 7, 8 million. That could ultimately be how this plays out. But the coaching staff and Mike Macdonald talked all offseason about how they had a cool plan in place, and they were really excited to see what they had in Draymond Jones. Maybe today was a little bit of a breakout for him. I thought he was outstanding. The other guy that we have to talk about, well, both actually. Can't take Nehemiah Pritchett for granted. The rookie 5th-round draft pick out of Auburn, starting at one corner. And then Josh Jobe, undrafted free agent 2 years ago out of Alabama, played 17 games with the Eagles the last 2 years, had 3 starts last year, was buried on the practice squad, hadn't really heard any buzz about him, and then he was elevated for this game. And not just elevated, but he started and played just about every snap from what I could see. He got picked on for a pass interference at one point, but he had a couple of passes defensed, and I thought, let's see, he came up with 6 tackles, 3 solo, 2 passes defense. I thought he was outstanding. Macdonald talked about him after the game, gave kudos to Schneider for finding him and picking him up. He's kind of a long corner, can be physical. Thought he looked great. Pritchett made some plays, had a couple of PDs. And then Kobe Bryant, getting his first chance to really start and play an entire game, led the team in tackles with 11, with a pass defense. Julian Love with 9 tackles. Jerome Baker with 7. Another thing I saw today is it seemed like the Seahawks were blitzing a little bit more, sending extra rushers more. It'll be interesting to see those numbers break down afterwards. And some of that was game script dictated, right? Seahawks got to play from ahead for the first time in a while. And so they got to be a little bit more aggressive. Terrell Dotson got sent a lot. And it impacted Cousins. Kirk Cousins, a very pedestrian game, really. 24 out of 35, 232 yards, the touchdown, 2 interceptions, a 72.6 rating. Just an outstanding win for the Seahawks, and the kind of win we've been waiting and wanting to see, right? We wanted, even after those first 3 games, as we were all excited about being undefeated, heading into play some better teams, they hadn't played a complete game, and we wanted to see that. Right? New England, the passing offense was outstanding, but the defense couldn't stop the run. The Broncos was kind of just a mixed bag of a little bit of everything. And then the Miami game, offense looked good, and the defense did, but you couldn't really call it a complete game because who was playing quarterback for the Dolphins and how dysfunctional they were on offense. This was a complete game. And it was good to see they got to face some adversity on the road against a red hot team, a team that had all the momentum. And the Seahawks come out with a win to go to 4-3, to get back to, in the win column, but also to be above 500, to be in first place, to hold on to at least a share of first place, regardless of what goes on in this Chiefs 49ers game. Just trying to check that out here. Let's pop in on the score real quick. Hold on. Goodness gracious. Chiefs lead 7-3 in the second quarter. What did you guys think? What stood out the most to you? And if some of you came into this game thinking, boy, this might be a rebuild year, this team looks kind of like a mess, I don't know if we're going to be able to compete over these next 7-8 weeks with the schedule getting as tough as it does. How do you feel now about this team facing the Bills at home next week? Now, the Bills kind of struggled early in this one. It took them a while to get going. They beat the Titans 34-10 today in Buffalo. Josh Allen, 21 out of 33, 323 yards, 2 touchdowns. Bills only ran the ball for 74 yards. A couple of turnovers from the Titans factored into this one. You feel a little bit more confident heading into next week to play a really, really good AFC team? Let's get over here and see what you guys think. Also, there were some really cool things today as well. Mike Macdonald grew up in Georgia, went to high school 22 miles north of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So he had a bunch of friends and family, it sounded like, waiting for him to talk after the game. So he gets to at least talk to them on a high note after a win. We saw it was Kenneth Walker's birthday, and he scored 2 touchdowns on his birthday when last night we got late word that he was sick and might not play today. So it was good that he sucked it up. And McDonald did say after the game, he was legitimately sick, wasn't feeling well today, but he gutted it out. So great performance for him on his birthday. And another milestone, got to see Michael Penix's first, wait a minute, got to see Sam Howell's first snap as a Seahawk. At one point, I think it was third quarter, Penix took a hand to the face. It was called a penalty. Got a finger in the eye. Looked like maybe they had to, I don't know if he wears contacts or not. They were either working on that or just clearing the eye. So Sam Howell had to go in, handed the ball to Zach Charbonnet. So we got to see Sam Howell's Seahawk debut and Michael Penix's debut for the Falcons. He came in late after Cousins' second interception. Just game was out of hand. And I think he went 1 for 1. With a short pass completed for that. Before we get to your questions and comments, again, this episode powered by BetUS. Head over to the website. They have live betting on all the NFL games. And if you sign up today using promo code YouTube150, they'll give you 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your second and third deposits, up to $2,000. That's at BetUS if you sign up for your new account today and use the promo code YouTube150. This episode also brought to you by the folks at Manscaped, and they want me to tell you about their new innovation, the Chairman Pro. And this is an electric foil shaver. And guys, I can tell you, I'm not just blowing smoke. I have never been able to successfully use an electric shaver. I gave up on trying to use them 30 years ago because they just didn't work for me. They just couldn't get it close enough shave. I have really fine whiskers. I always joke, it takes me 3 days to grow 5 o'clock shadow. But the first time I used the Chairman Pro was a game changer. I use it every other day now just to kind of keep up on maintenance. It's fantastic. And right now, if you head over to manscaped.com, you can get the Chairman Pro for 20% off plus free shipping if you use the promo code Seahawks. Thanks to those guys for sponsoring the show. Also, if you want to support the show in all of the other ways, check the description down below. All the details are there. You can also now join and subscribe to the channel for members only perks down below as well. What do we got here? Christopher Hamami, appreciate your repost of my message on X today. Hey, I try to engage. If you don't follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever, please do. I really try to engage. I know there are other content creators out there and members of the media that don't, and I get it. They're inundated with notifications all the time. I try to be as active as I can in engaging with you guys. I'd rather be flying an X-Wing. One of our subscribers to the channel. Thank you for that. After seeing Haynes and Jarrell, I'm feeling much better about the future of our offensive line. This is a point. I'm glad you brought that up. This is a point that I've been making for a couple of months now, really. But it came to a head a few weeks ago after a particularly bad game. I think it might have been the Lions game when I think Geno was only sacked one time, was able to operate, had a good game throwing the football, but Hutchinson had like 15 pressures in that game. Where I had one viewer in particular, but I heard this from other areas as well, that, John Schneider just needs to be held accountable for the failure of the offensive line, and that a lot of this is due to his comments in the offseason that he thought interior offensive linemen were overdrafted and overpaid. I think that got misconstrued a little bit. I think some people took that to mean he doesn't think they're important. I don't think that's what he was trying to say at all. But my response to that was, look, it's not for lack of trying. And if you look back at this last offseason and still maintain that you think John Schneider has been negligent, as one person tried to tell me in trying to build this offensive line, and in doing so was basically short-circuiting any opportunity this team was going to have to contend, I pushed back against that, because when you look at what they did this offseason, obviously making the choice to let Damian Lewis go. You can debate about how good you thought Lewis was or whether he was deserving of that massive contract that the Panthers gave him. Then if they had signed him early in free agency, maybe they wouldn't have been able to sign Jonathan Hankins. Maybe they wouldn't have been able to sign Rayshon Jenkins or the linebackers or some of these other guys. But that was kind of the beginning of an offseason of a lot of activity on the offensive line. They drafted Satawa Lamea, who I am really bullish on his upside. Think he might be the long-term starter, might be the starter at left guard next year, with Laken Tomlinson just a placeholder there. They signed Tomlinson. They tried a bunch of other veteran guys out and talked to a bunch of other veteran guys. They felt like Tomlinson was the better guy. They drafted Michael Jarrell in the 6th round. They signed Connor Williams. And that was the culmination of an entire offseason of recruiting and pursuing Connor Williams coming off the ACL. He's now starting to look like pre-injury Connor Williams. And then they go out and unsure about what the timeline was going to be with Abe Lucas. They signed George Fant, who at the time seemed like a very, very prudent signing, a very solid, dependable vet who could play either side at a reasonable dollar amount. You don't know he's going to get hurt. He'd been reliable throughout his career. They put a lot into that. And so what I was asking people to do is what you're talking about here. And that's squint your eyes a little bit and look into the future. Can you see a starting offensive line together, a group together for a couple of years that can get some continuity and become one of the better lines in the league? And my answer to that is yes. You're going to have a decision after next season with Charles Cross when he's eligible for a contract extension. It's going to cost you a lot of money to keep him, but he's worth keeping. You need some clarity at left guard long-term, but I think Lamea can be that guy. I think Connor Williams has expressed he'd like to be here long-term. It's a 1-year deal. Certainly the Seahawks are going to try to sign him coming off of this season, if you can keep him in place. But even if you don't, talk to me about Jalen Sundell. At right guard now, we've seen Christian Haynes take some steps forward, but you have 2 guys there that seem to be getting better each week. And now you see the potential in a Michael Jarrell. And needless to say, if Abe Lucas comes back healthy at some point, now you have a little bit of, not an embarrassment of riches. I mean, let's not jump too far ahead with Jarrell, but a lot of upside there. You can see the pieces starting to potentially come together there with those guys. Hawks fan Matt, man, Cousins looked out of his Falcon mind. A little shout out to John Yates, co-host of that podcast, who came on for the preview a couple days ago. One of my favorite podcast names I've ever seen. Yeah, he was frustrated after that last pick. I can't wait to see the pressure numbers in this game, because it felt like, even though they only got to Cousins 3 times, that they affected him a lot. pretty consistently throughout the game. And sometimes, as I said earlier, when they were sending extra guys, but also other times with 4, I thought that group of, Murphy, Williams, Robertson, Harris, and Dre Jones were really consistently impacting him, along with Derek Hall and Boye Mafe on the edge. I don't know if Mafe was still kind of getting his sea legs under him after missing a couple of weeks and not being able to play full reps. He obviously had the big strip sack in the second half. That was play of the game. But there were other times throughout the game he was kind of quiet. The snap count will tell us some of that. They may have taken it easy on him a little bit coming back from that knee injury. But also Mike Macdonald said after the game that this is really the first time, because of health up front and the addition of Robertson Harris, that they could rotate their defensive linemen the way they wanted to. And I think that really affected how fresh they were able to be late third quarter, early fourth quarter when the game was in the balance, and they made those plays and they were able to take the game over and ice it. I think for the first time this year, they were able to rotate those guys and not have to play some of those interior defensive linemen so damn many snaps. X-Wing says Byron Murphy is never allowed to get hurt again. Yeah, he's a game changer. Even when he's not racking up stats, he's a game changer. There was one play that stood out too. Was it a swing pass? There was a play where, and now I can't remember the details of the play, but he chased the ball after being double teamed at the point of attack from the nose tackle position. He ends up chasing the ball 20 yards downfield and getting in on the tackle. Love to see the hustle. I just think sky's the limit for him as a player. And the numbers are going to come. The sacks and the big plays are going to come. But for now, he instantly improved the Seahawks on defense just with his presence up front. This is not untrue. Charles Harrison says we have a lot of work to do. We do. And some of it's personnel. You can tell that they're lacking in some areas on defense, especially even though it appeared, watching it live today, that Jerome Baker and Terrell Dotson played better today. It appeared there were fewer missed run fits. Neither of them, obviously, look like an impact player, the type of player that's going to affect offensive game plans and dictate some terms. Again, when things really clicked in Baltimore for Macdonald, it was when they got Roquan Smith to pair with Patrick Queen. We liked what we saw from Tyrese Knight. It frustrates me they're not working him in and giving him some reps now to help in his development. He only played when Baker was hurt. But I thought in the run game in particular, there were some times he just seems to come with a little more violence, seems to be a little bit surer of a tackler. He finds the football. So we have the upside of him potentially to look forward to. But, I don't think there's any question that going into the offseason, talking about draft and free agency, we're going to be talking about the inside linebacker position. Charles continues, too soon to tell. We need another good team to prove it. Absolutely. I said at the beginning of the season, because of all the newness, the uncertainty with this team, there would be games along the way that they win that they shouldn't, games that they lose that they shouldn't. I think we all felt that way about the Giants game. And really, isn't that the only one? For as frustrated as we all were coming into this game off of 3 straight losses, at the beginning of the season, if you were to all have predicted the first 6 games, I suspect many of you would have come up and said 3-3. It just might have happened a different way. You might have thought Miami beats us here in week 3 with a healthy Tua. And then we beat the Giants, some combination of that. At best, they may have been 4-2. The Giants game is the one that stinks. Even though that team was better in some respects than I think a lot of us gave them credit for, it's a game they should have played better and they should have won. But then to turn around and go down in again, what I say is a must-win game and play a red-hot team on the road and beat them can't be understated. It can't. This was huge. This is the type of game that can bring a team together and get a team to start to believe. And we might have seen it happen in front of our eyes today. I felt like that team in the first half was still kind of unsure. In the second half, started to feel themselves a little bit, started to trust each other a little bit. And that confidence came through in translated to turnovers. This could be a game that kind of catapults them. Now, you have the Bills coming in next week. The Bills are no joke. They're at 5-2 now. It's a long trip out here for them, but they're coming off another big win against the Titans. Let's take a look at who their losses have come against, because I don't have a photographic memory, you guys. So yeah, they won their first 3 to start the season. Then they dropped 2 in a row. They lose to the Ravens 35-10. Be interesting. I'll have to go back and watch that matchup on all 22 this week and see. There might be some clues within that tape for Mike Macdonald to understand what parts of that scheme worked against the Bills. And then they lose 23 to the Texans before bouncing back to beat the Jets 23-20, and then a convincing win over the Titans today. So they've been a little uneven. When they've won big, and they're capable of scoring a ton of points, both on the ground and through the air. Amari Cooper, the new addition there, he got his first catch as a Bill today, and it went for a touchdown. So another weapon there for Josh Allen. Let's see. Josh Larson asked, when Lucas comes back, can Jarrell shift to guard? Maybe. Like, he certainly seems to have the skill set for it. He's not too long and too big. Like, sometimes that can be awkward for a guard. His footwork's good. His handwork's good. He's physical. He likes to punish guys. But why would you shift him to guard and then interrupt the development of Christian Haynes, Anthony Bradford? You're not going to move him to the left side. You're not going to move him to a position he's never played on, a side he's never played on. So I wouldn't see him moving over to left guard. I think LeMay is the next guy up there. I don't see it. I think the commitment will be to him at tackle. Now, this is a conversation we may have next year in the offseason. If Lucas comes back at some point this year, like Schneider expects, and he's healthy and he looks like Abe Lucas, and okay, here we go. Now we have a big time top 10 right tackle again. What do we do with this other guy who's got a ton of talent? At that point, then you start to look at maybe there's another position to keep him on the field. Of course, by then you might also be having the conversation about retaining Cross. How much is that going to cost? Can you make that happen? Can one of them play the left side? But right now, absolutely not. I want Michael Jarrell focusing on right tackle and nothing else at this point. Card Craze said Atlanta had a couple of interior defensive linemen out for this game that helped the Seahawks. Actually, they had an interior linebacker and an edge player out for this game. Fine. Seahawks are without their starting, 2 of their top 3 starting corners, 3 of their top 4 corners. Trey Brown and Reek Woolen are your outside starters, and Artie Burns is your next man up in the slot. And you're starting strong safety in Rayshawn Jenkins. So, okay. Yeah, I'll take that. Like, injuries happen, and I think the Seahawks were just as shorthanded, if not more so, than the Falcons. And honestly, the Falcons defense hadn't been playing great coming into this game. There was a lot of criticism for former UW defensive coordinator and head coach Jimmy Lake, who's the coordinator now, and as John Yates told us, is calling the plays, even though it's Raheem Morris, is a defensive guy. That's why he got that job. Taking a lot of criticism for being bend but don't break, giving up a ton of yards, having to stiffen up in the red zone, playing too conservative, playing soft zones, not being aggressive enough, giving up 34 points now, even though 7 of that was on defense to the Seahawks. That criticism is going to remain, and certainly they have some work to do there on defense in Atlanta as well. Charles asked, the Bills offense is giving Allen a lot of time to throw. Can we penetrate with what we have on D? Yeah, of course we can. The Seahawks have been among the league leaders in pressures all season long, even given the fact that against, they played 1 full game without their top 4 guys up front on defense. You're adding Robertson Harris to this, another week of Mafe getting fully healthy, presumably. Another week of now Byron Murphy has come back healthy, played the whole game, made it out okay. The hamstring's fine. Another game under his belt. And those guys learning to play together. Absolutely, they can put some things in place. Now, obviously, the concern, we'll talk about this more as we get deeper into the week, is Allen's mobility, his ability to move around. That scares me, right? And now they've added another weapon to the pass game. That's going to be the biggest test. Well, you can argue Detroit was the biggest test. But if you look ahead the next 6 games or so, up until that 49er game coming off the bye, this will be the best offense they face and a really, really good test. Can they build off of the things that we saw in the second half, in particular today, being a little stiffer against the run? They still gave up some longer runs, but they were able to keep it in check for the most part. They didn't allow any explosive pass plays in this game at all against a really good bevy of weapons. Can they take that and build on it and then go out against a better offense and a Super Bowl contender and get it done? It's going to be a fun week. Tasha, another Mike Jarrell comment. Got to get all these up there. I know this is just one game from Jarrell, but this is some of the best play we've seen from this position in almost 2 years, even after Abe came back, because he was never 100% last season. Agreed. And I really hope I will try later this week to put some tape together when the All-22 comes out of Jarrell and some of his key plays. YouTube's been cracking down lately on being able to use that stuff, even though it 100% falls within the legal definition of fair use. But I'll give it a shot later this week and see how that works, because I'm really anxious to see that. I just thought he looked like a guy that just knew how to play the position. The concern and the question was, can he handle the speed and the power of NFL defenders coming from such a small school? When I felt better coming into this game was after Macdonald's press conference on Friday, and he spoke. Sometimes he's kind of vague about the performance of a player. He's kind of been that way again about the Christian Haynes, Anthony Bradford thing. But when he specifically came out and talked really enthusiastically about Jarrell's development in practice, his improvement, how the game has slowed down for him, how he's beaten all of their best defenders in Seattle in one-on-one drills, he seemed really, really confident. And then he finished it off by saying that they think he has a really bright future and this could be the start of it. And I'm excited to see it go. They see Michael Jarrell as a future starting right tackle in this league. I thought it was just an outstanding debut for him. Let's see. Geno was pretty good. JSN had a better rating. JSN, again, this felt like another game where it was really close to having a big game. What did he end up with? Hold on. Just 3 catches, 9 yards, a long of 5, on 6 targets, but he had a play down near the end zone where I thought they should have called pass interference. Guy ripped his arm away. It was beautifully thrown by Geno. Might have scored on it. Would have gotten down inside the 5. Still a little frustrating to see how they use him. A lot of little, behind the line of scrimmage type screens. Still trying to make DK a focal point of this offense. DK was 7 targets today, 4 catches, 99 yards, and a touchdown. He did leave with the knee injury late in the game. Mike Macdonald did say they don't think it's very serious, and they're optimistic he'll be fine. Even though he was carted off, he sat on the sidelines for about 10 minutes. That implies to me that it kind of reminded me of the Boye Mafe injury. Maybe it was on that catch that he had on the sideline that was ruled out of bounds. Would have been an outstanding catch. Came down, banged the knee. Didn't look like the knee hyperextended at all. Maybe it's not a ligament. Maybe it's more of just a contusion. But Macdonald didn't seem too concerned after the game. But yeah, Geno was good again. Like, that 49er game was his worst game. And and he still played well. Let's see where he is on the season now. Geno with through 7 games, 1,778 yards, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Has that been updated? No, that has not been updated. He has 8 touchdowns now, right? He had 6 through 6 games. He had 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions coming into this game. So he has 8 now, 8 touchdowns. So he's up near 2,000 yards. He just, when he drops back to pass, do you ever get nervous? Like, I expect a good outcome now every time he drops back to pass. He just seems so comfortable and so confident in how this offense works and how he wants to operate within it. And with each passing week, it seems like he just gets better at knowing when to use his feet and when to scramble around. And when he scrambles, you get excited because he usually makes a play at the end of it. He's more creative now. It's just fun to see a guy this old who's been doing it for this long continue to get better week in, week out. JSN QB1, yeah, they're talking about the passer rating. So unfortunately, that play ended up being irrelevant. It was DK's biggest play of the day. Early second half was the first play of the second half. Little pitch out to JSN, the double pass. He goes down to DK, kind of throws him a 50-50 ball. DK goes up and high points it. A rare high point occasion for him. Although maybe DK Metcalf's the only player in the league that can still figure out a way to make it a body catch, even when he goes up to high point it. And then there was a penalty after that. The Seahawks got pushed back and ended up having to punt out of that drive. So it didn't lead to anything, but it was fun. It was fun to see the trick play from Grubb. So Ben Baller says, told you when we drafted Jarrell, he'd be better than Stone. So give him credit for that. Shout out to Ben. Let's shoot down to the bottom here and see if there's anything else that I missed. You guys. Yeah, Josh caught me later that he met as a passer. I got that. Let's see. Good Lucking says, hopefully the travel hurts Buffalo. Otherwise, the defense is a mismatch. They're top 5 and we're bottom 5 overall in D. Sure. Yeah. You're also going to have 2 of the best offenses in the league facing each other. That's going to be a fun game. Let's see what the forecast is. What's the weather look like it's going to be for next week? Hold on. Give me a second here. Sunday, high of 54, 6% chance of rain with potential thunderstorms. Okay, that could be fun. Okay, I think we got most of you guys in here. Let me just take a look around the rest of the league real quick. We talk about some scores here. Fantastic finish with the Lions and the Vikings. So the Vikings lose their first game. They're 5-1. So technically, I guess you could say the Seahawks are just a game out now of the 1 seed, theoretically, in the NFC. As the Vikings lose, but still play the Lions really tough, goes down to the end. The Lions have to put together a last drive to get a field goal to win that one. The Rams playing the Raiders right now. It's 14-6 Rams in the third. Commanders just keep doing their thing, man. Are the Commanders the best team in the NFC? Is it still the Vikings, or are the Commanders, who are going to be 5-2? They're playing the hapless Panthers right now. They're up 27-0 midway through the third. Are they the best team in the NFC right now? Chiefs with a 14-3 halftime lead over the 49ers. So the Seahawks, barring a big comeback from the Niners, and this game's in Santa Clara, Seahawks have an opportunity to go back up by a game in the NFC West. Jaguars over the Patriots 32-16. The Bills, as I mentioned, 34-10 over the Titans. We'll take a closer look at that box score in a second. Bengals over the Browns 21-14 in a game that saw Deshaun Watson being carted off with what appears to be an Achilles injury. He appears to be out for the rest of the season. The Packers eke out a win over the Texans at home to improve to 5-2. So they're up there near the top of the league as well. The Colts beat the Dolphins 16-10 in a game that looks just by the box score as if it would have been a tough one to watch. That Lions win 31-29. And then the Eagles really taking it to the Giants. Saquon Barkley's return to New York to play in front of his old fans with the Giants. And they stomped the Giants 28-3, the final score there. So a lot of interesting results around the league. Again, let's just take a look at that Buffalo game before we wrap it up here as they prepare to come in here next week. James Cook, only 32 yards on 12 carries. He actually wasn't the leading rusher for the Bills. Ray Davis was 5 carries, 41. They only ran for 74 yards. So that Tennessee was able to keep Josh Allen in check running the football. But again, he was effective through the air, 323 yards, 2 touchdowns. Keon Coleman came up big, the rookie, 4 catches for 125 yards. No touchdowns, but a long of 57. I mentioned earlier, Amari Cooper had a touchdown on his first catch with the Bills, 4 catches, 66 yards. Khalil Shakir, 7 catches, 65 yards. Dalton Kincaid, their outstanding tight end, 3 catches, 52 yards. So Josh Allen spreads the ball around there. They came up with 3 sacks. Talk about the defense. 5 passes defense, 6 tackles for loss. So they really beat up on that Tennessee offensive line. So the Seahawks will have their hands full, certainly, next year, without a doubt. Let me check in one more time, see if you guys have anything good for me. Really appreciate all the engagement and hopping on for this live show. Love the comments and questions. Follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever, as always. Down below, you can find all the ways to support the show as well. Owen Carter, now as a subscriber, you can become a member of the channel. Thank you, Owen, for the super thanks. For chipping in. You're one of my favorite hockey YouTubers. Really appreciate that, Owen. Thank you so much for chipping in. Josh Larson, also $9.99. Love the live reaction shows. Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Josh. And Jerry says, we need to beat Buffalo. I mean, just to wrap this up, what today did is it really altered the outcome of the season. Especially if things kind of hold where they are now. And the 49ers, as we speak, are on the 5-yard line. They are driving against the Chiefs. They're in the red zone. Chiefs just came up with a big stop on 3rd and 1, though. It'll be interesting to see if Niners elect to take the field goal here or if they try to score. There's a good chance the Seahawks are going to end up today with a full game lead in the NFC West. And coming off a game against a good opponent, you cannot argue with the quality of this win in Atlanta. And then you come home to face a Buffalo Bills team that gives you a great test. To me, this is one of those weeks that there is one word and one word only that applies to this matchup against the Bills this week, and that is opportunity. This is an opportunity, once again, to come off your best showing of the year and see how it all flies against an outstanding team. Macdonald did sound confident late in the week that Reek Woolen would be back. Potentially Trey Brown would be back for this game as well. On top of all those defensive linemen now that are healthy and in tow, came out of the game without any major injuries. DK getting banged up late in this one was the only one, but on defense doesn't look like anyone got banged up. So you're going to be as close to full strength maybe as you've been in a while to go up against the best team you've faced coming off your best performance. It's an opportunity. If you lose on Sunday, you drop to 4-4. Okay. Still at worst tied for first place in your division. And then let's just look at the rest of the schedule and how that comes together. I think you play the Rams the week after that. So you stay home and you play a Rams team that has been really up and down, has struggled with injuries. Cooper Kupp might be back for that game. He's been trying to make his way back. And then you get your bye. So, at this point, good chance to have a winning record going into the bye. And then you come out and you go 49ers, Cardinals, Jets, Cardinals, Packers, Vikings. Massive stretch, but coming off a bye, potentially getting Abe Lucas back and some of these other guys that are on injured reserve as well. So as much as and I know some of you were along for the ride with me on this, tried to enter this season with more of an open mind. Let's see what this looks like. Wins and losses don't matter this year. I said that numerous occasions. Just want to see how this team develops and what the future looks like. Anything else is gravy. Then you start to drink the Kool-Aid. You get really excited about this staff and some of the new additions and how they started the season. And 2 weeks ago, I said they were going to go 12-5. Don't know how that's looking now. But today's win, this is the point I'm trying to make, cannot be understated with how important it was. The Seahawks may have saved their season. If they indeed go on and make the playoffs this year or even contend for the division or more, we're probably going to look back at this week and say that's when it kind of turned. That's when it turned. And now, as opposed to trying to see how this staff and this team reacts to adversity, now let's see how they build on this. Because if indeed this was the beginning of a young team coming together under a new coaching staff, then the rest of the season could get really, really fun. I think that's going to do it for me, guys. Let's get one in here from Dizzy91. This is the kind of game Seattle plays when they get a little rest, don't have to play 3 games in 11 days. That might ultimately be, the biggest storyline of this is that, they went through that stretch, they came out of it, and they made something positive out of it and got a win when they really, really needed one. Again, shout out to the folks at BetUS for sponsoring this live stream, and the folks at Manscaped, and to all of you for supporting the show and the channel. I'll be back in a couple of days with a look at some injury updates and taking an early look at the Bills and how they've done what they've done and how the Seahawks match up with them when we take a look at all the metrics and do a proper preview of that show. Until then, follow me on Twitter as always at Seahawks Forever. Subscribe to the show, give a thumbs up, give a like, all of that stuff. Thanks for joining me, you guys. 378 of you sitting in there right now. Really appreciate it. Forever and always go Hawks. Talk to you soon.